We talk this month about words and deeds of prophetic women and men as a source of Unitarian Universalists. And often when we talk about this source, we mention famous people, presidents, artists, scientists. But today, I want us to recognize that you don't need to be famous to be important and to have something to say. I ask you to listen as Ingrid Cleaver reads us a poem written by her son, Bert.
My son Bert wanted to be a writer at an early age, so he chose Indiana University and got his bachelor degree in English literature and history. Of course, he could not make a living in this field, so his passion blossomed as a hobby. He published about 20 to 25 poems in different literary magazines. 15 years ago, his life ended abruptly after a heart transplant. Footprints. River, come, wash my burning feet. Come, river, wash my toes. Please come, river. I need your cool length, your long song now as never before. River, come into my heart. Strong river, wiggle and wander through my veins. Fill my lungs, drench my brain, purge my spleen. Clean river, come hither and tell your story. Yes, the one about the tigers in the mud, the elephants in the mud, the dinosaur. Tell me, river, about the beginning when everything began to stir and tumble, the moment of flame and root and tall tornado, when the earth fever ragged and rose, when toad and cricket pranced and flew. Tell me, river, what did you do? When meat and mineral, wood and wind, leaf and light burst into being, into life, when salmon slithered and dolphin leaped, when monkey swung and locust sprung, and larvae spawned on donkey dung, did you dare, O mighty one, praise the dawn and bow before the old volcano? When upon your quiet bank you felt the shadow of cold danger. The first footprint of a stranger.
Thank you, Ingrid. I was intrigued by Ingrid's request to preach on her son Bert's poem. I'm not trained in literary criticism, but my theological education taught me biblical criticism, and I have found to be poetry to be my favorite type of scripture. In biblical criticism, there is a term which Ingrid will understand. It's called Sitz im Leben. It's a German phrase which roughly translates to setting in life. When one reads scripture or poetry, one asks, what role did this writing have when it was created? What was its setting in life? Now, the Bible contains narratives, hymns, rituals, and prayers and other forms. Knowing the original intent helps us to better understand a passage. Like, for example, if you were an archaeologist and you came across this sacred scroll that said, "Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a tiger by the toe," you might imagine that this was a strange poem about catching tigers. But knowing it sits in Leben, we all know it's a children's game about choosing people who is going to be leading the game. And so words have meaning in and of themselves, but they have more meaning when we know their context. Bert Cleaver wrote extensively in private journals, but this piece was published in a book. And a poem may have its origin in the interior of a person, in that stillness of a heron in the river or an eagle perched in a tree. But when it's published, it takes flight. It no longer belongs to the river or the tree or the poet. Like children, these poems belong to the parents only briefly. From the point of birth, children and poems begin to form a life of their own. Where did this poem come from? The author's Sitz in Leben, or setting in life, was a childhood home on a bluff above the Wabash River. To his mother, this poem speaks of his childhood because she remembers him running out the back door. To me, an author who did not know, a person who did not know the author, I look for broader themes. Structurally, the poem contains two requests and a question. And you can look at the poem that's printed on your order of service to find these. The first request is for cleansing. River, come river, wash my burning feet. The second request comes in the middle of the poem. Is a request for understanding. Tell me, river, about the beginning. The question is complex. It comes at the end of the poem. It is a question to the river. And like all questions, it reveals something about the questioner. But when we read the poem aloud, we find those words on our own lips, connected to our own minds, and we wonder what it means for us. The question is, did you dare, O mighty one, praise the dawn and bow before the old volcano when upon your quiet bank you felt the shadow of cold danger, the first footprint of a stranger? Let us look at the first request, the request for cleansing. Water as a metaphor for cleansing is common among human beings. It's a very easy metaphor to make, but it also has deeper meanings than just washing dirt. Hindus bathe in the Ganges. Jesus was baptized in the River Jordan. Cleansing of the outside is connected to the cleansing of the inside. The river in this poem begins with the feet, but moves on to the heart, the veins, the lung, the brain, and the spleen. The author states his need for the river's cool length and long song. The river gives more than immediate cleansing and cooling. It brings an extended sense of time, approaching eternity. Life is a series of moments, note after note, moving up and down. In each moment, we can only know whether we are feeling better or worse than the previous moment. Only by washing away the hot moment can we hear the long song. We see the melody of our life, where it has been, and that gives us clues to where it might be going. It places our current high note or low note into context. And that context strengthens one's heart. One does not get carried away when the floodwaters are high, nor does one despair when the river is low and barren sandbars appear. One realizes that the ups and downs are part of the natural rhythm of life. One realizes that rivers wriggle through our veins, drenching our brains with wisdom. The rivers fill our lungs and receive oxygen from the air. If lungs were only filled with air, they would serve no purpose. But it is in those lungs that the air meets the many rivers, which distributes the oxygen to the rest of the body. Just as snow in the rarefied air of mountaintops melts into rivers to feed the land. Purge my spleen is the final request for cleansing. There's a common expression to vent one's spleen. It's an idiom for expressing anger. To have one's spleen purged is to have that anger washed away. Anger is a human reaction to perceived injustice. It may be directed at a specific person or event, but it also may be generalized. All of us at some time have felt that life is not fair. We remember every slight and disappointment, and then conveniently forget all the times that we have slighted or disappointed others. And we also forget our blessings. The long, cool song of the river helps us remember the larger picture. By forgiving ourselves and others, our spleen is purged. The spleen is basically a blood filter that disposes of old blood cells. Old grudges are like dead blood cells. They no longer serve the purpose of life. They need to be purged by the long song of the river. The second request of the poem is the request for wisdom. Clean river, come hither and tell your story. This request is for the whole story of all the animals: tigers, elephants, dinosaurs, toads, crickets, salmon, dolphin, monkey, and larvae. These animals live in different times and different climates. It speaks of how the river has changed over the millennia. It has experienced flame and tornado, light and dung. The river is old. It connects us to a story that is longer than our own. Placing our feet into the river links our story to many more stories. The small melody of our life becomes part of a larger song, a movement in a symphony. This interaction changes us, but it also changes the river. Change is not always easy or pretty. The majestic saber-toothed tiger was swallowed by the mud. The mammoth and the mastodon were swallowed by the mud. They'd be unknown if they had not met death. The mud that killed them preserved their bones, so it could be discovered by future wanderers of the river. The river has cleansed generation after generation, sacrificing its own cleanliness as it carries filth and deposits elsewhere. It creates log jams and ice jams that change its course. Sometimes beavers and humans try to control it by changing its flow. Each change brings loss and gain. We do not know the entirety of the process. A flooded field destroys the food we grow. A drained wetland creates new sources of food, but also kills its inhabitants. Destructive forces compete against each other. Different generations have different ideas about what is good and what is evil. Is donkey dung pollution or the source of a new life? That leads us to the final question. Did you dare, O mighty one, praise the dawn and bow before the old volcano, when upon your quiet bank you felt the shadow of cold danger, the first footprint of a stranger. The river is mighty, but also in danger. When it perceived danger, did it in turn turn to something even more mighty? The power of a volcano, the power of the sun. And when in danger, praise. It's not usually my reaction to danger. My reaction to danger is usually to focus on the danger or run away from the danger. But to praise shifts the fear. And just to realizing that this danger is part of a larger context, part of a larger blessing. The river is mighty, but also in danger. The river can bring life and death, and each interaction is a risk. The first footprint of a stranger is the shadow of cold danger. The poet is cleansed, but also wonders if he is cursing the river that blesses him. He is not the first stranger. He will not be the last. Each stranger leaves its mark. In Kentucky, across the Ohio River from Indiana, is a state park with an unlikely name of Big Bone Lick. So named because woolly mammoths were attracted to the salt deposits and lived and died along the banks of the river. During the last ice age, when glaciers scoured the land and carved new rivers and lakes, animals and climate changed the rivers. After the glaciers receded, Native Americans followed the large mammals and hunted them to extinction. Those Native Americans were displaced by Europeans moving across the continent. The colonists developed salt mines and further excavated the area, revealing more and more bones. The salt industry died. The Europeans came to define themselves as Americans. The site became the birthplace of paleontology, proving that the world was more ancient than ever imagined. They created a park in order to preserve this part of the river. And ironically, it's 20 miles south of the Creation Museum, which strives to deny the long song of the river, saying that it has been virtually unchanged for 6,000 years. This is complex. Who will save the river? Or should the river be allowed to change? Which stranger is most dangerous for the river? Our relationship to the river, whatever river, is like our relationships to other people. Everyone we have met was a stranger at some time. Every relationship is fraught with risk and reward. The river risks stranger after stranger, sometimes benefiting, sometimes losing. Its purpose is greater than itself. In times of great danger, it looks to greater powers of the earth and the sun, and then has the strength to cleanse the strangers whose footprints press the quiet riverbank. Sometimes the river is thanked, other times it is treated like a sewer. What do our footprints mean for nature? What do our footprints mean for the sake of humanity? If we indeed stand on the shoulder of giants, is it our purpose to become giants so others can stand on us? The bones of giants line the riverbank. Is it a good thing or bad? Do we make our footprints smaller so the river grows larger? Or do we make our footsteps larger and try to control the river? Will love or fear determine our relationship with the river and with each other? Where do we find the strength to praise something that we are connected to that is bigger than us, so that we have the strength to connect with what is smaller than us that might cause danger, that gives us an opportunity to sit with children and tell them a story in the midst of their restlessness, and then teach them that they too have footprints that will take them through the journey of their lives and change the world. May we bless and be blessed.